Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. I was just looking at my notes, seeing what I need to do today and what I can get away with perhaps not doing and leaving till tomorrow. And then I thought, no, I need to get on with stuff today. And it's just come to mind because I was dealing with a private message and I just looked at the clock. Over 2 hours. Now in my book, if somebody sends me a private message, it means they've bothered. And the least I can do is bother to get back to them. So that time has to be put in. I feel it's a responsibility. On the public side, in the public comments, you'll notice an awful lot of people just get a heart lately. It's because of the time involved. You know, quite honestly, not every comment needs a reply. But I still believe it needs acknowledgement that I've read it, and that's what the little heart's for. Doesn't mean to say I necessarily love that comment. It's just the only symbol I've got access to. I don't know where people get all these pretty little pictures that they put in their comments, but again, I'm sure that takes time, and time is limited. So, you know. And then I got onto my notes to, like I said, see what I was up to today. And I started thinking, with an air of confusion, you know, what sort of monkey poo is this orchid going to get today? Is it going to get this sort of special monkey poo, or is it going to get that sort of special monkey poo? And then I stepped back and I thought, what monkey poo would it get in the wild? And quite honestly, it'll get what it's fricking given, won't it? And sometimes it'll be stronger and sometimes it won't, but does it get to choose? Does it hell? And then I thought, actually, all my mounted stuff today excuse me, is due a flush. Well, that makes life easy then, doesn't it? Well, yes and no, I've still got to get on and do it, but whenever I've got clean water in here, before adding anything in, then the air plants get a dunk. And while they're having a dunk, I can go and do something else. The poor old RO unit's going to have to work its socks off today. I've got what's left in that bottle, which is what, less than a litre, and another one of these, about 2.4 litres, and I am then out of RO water. Just got lazy, just didn't get round to doing it yesterday, or the day before, Distracted, other things on my mind, like bothering, should I? And so, RO unit's now working hard, that'll top the stocks up. I've then got to have a think about that thing. That holds so much water. That's half a day the RO unit takes to refill that and start from scratch. And then I thought I've missed quite a few days with the Vandas. I looked back to when I last put that water in there and what went in there and what use it's had. And I thought, well, actually it hasn't had a lot of use yet. It probably doesn't need doing. But, you know, at the end of the day, I'll probably still refresh that water. Unfortunately, the garden doesn't need any, but I've got a couple of watering cans I can pour it into, and then that can go round places in the garden. But we've had a fair bit of rain lately, so the garden doesn't need my attention, thank goodness. Otherwise, that's more chores to do. But yeah, I mean, the forgotten few, you know, these you know, they live in a nice humid environment, yes, but they still need a flipping drink now and again, and they've been neglected, as does this stuff. Yeah? Now that stuff actually gets dripped on sometimes, so sometimes it might be getting dripped on with some quite higher levels of feed than I would normally get anywhere near Spanish moss. And then you sort of think about where the Spanish moss lives. Well, it hangs off of trees. And above those trees, things jump about. Furry things, feathered things, and do things, you know, feathered things doings get on the Spanish moss. Does it all drop dead? Does it hell? Yeah, so I'm de-worrying an awful lot of stuff. Where the worry came from is irrelevant, but worries have got into my head about things. And before I had those worries, everything was fine. So why wouldn't it be fine if I stopped worrying about them? The chances are it wouldn't. So No confusion, no worrying, just do the things that have always worked. Chopping and changing only adds workload in and worries, and quite honestly I want to enjoy my orchids, not worry about them all the time. I have got a few that are a worry as individuals, but as a collective, no worries. But you know, you can add worries into your collection, in your thoughts. It's not necessary, quite honestly. You think how these flipping things live in the wild. You know, they get storms, they get torrential rains, they get droughts at times that they didn't plan on. And do they come out the other end of it? Well, in the main, apart from when we interfere as humans, yeah, they are still there. They are still growing. They are perpetuating their species. They only seem to run into trouble when we interfere. Well, bear that in mind with your own orchids. Is it worth interfering? Possibly not, but these are your choices. My choices are to keep it simple. You know, I only have one type of monkey poo. I can adjust how much, but I'm not adjusting to many different sorts and mucking around like that. The differences would not be worth the effort for me, quite honestly. I've got too much to do out here. And the only way I can cope with it and be happy about doing it is to keep it as simple as possible. So I will keep it as simple as possible because it eases the workload. Yeah, so I got stuff to do today. Literally, it's only watering the mounts, and now that I've worked out they only need a flush, you know, that's not going to take me long at all. And because I know it's not going to take me long, it'll be enjoyable because I can stop and look at the plants, just give them a quick check over. Is everything okay? Oh look, new growth on that one. Oh, that's nice. That one's been sat there doing nothing for ages and now it's growing. Or why is that new growth not growing? You know, I can have a think about each individual one because I have the time. When you rush around, things get missed and mistakes are made. Plants get knocked over, plants get dropped. So it pays to try and work your orchid maintenance and looking after them at a time when you can relax and do it and enjoy it. Because charging around like a blue ass whatnot is going to cause accidents, trust me. I've had enough of them myself. I mean, if you remember my lovely Brassavola nodosa with those really strong new growths, just after it had flowered, it pushed up those new growths and started the new roots, and I was over the moon because that was the next lot of flowers coming on. And due to rushing around, I dropped it flat on its face and broke both of those new growths off. And there was language, not filmed, because I'd have to edit that sort of language. I'm surprised the next door neighbours didn't hear that. That was annoying. And then afterwards you sort of think, actually it's upsetting as well. Look how much I've set that plant back by. But what's it doing now? I think it's got 4 new growths on it now. So where the damage was done, it's responded by chucking out a load of new growths. Now don't go throwing all your plants on the floor. I know what you lot are like. We don't want people deliberately damaging plants to see if they'll put up new growths, because it might not work. That wasn't advice, that was explaining what I'd done and what happened as a consequence on that plant. Other plants might not respond so well. An example, just Phalaenopsis. You know, you break the top of one of those plants off, it may not make it. You know. However, if you break a new growth off of a Dendrobium, for instance, the chances are it'll totally ignore it and just carry on and put up a new one when it gets round to it. Might put up 2 instead, but that's potluck. I'm not sure you can plan that sort of thing. Anyway, so a flush day today, no complications, no issues, no thoughts. Just do it. The simplest type of watering you can imagine, just a flush. So I know what's in that water, absolutely nothing. So that's what they're going to get. And then next time I do them, which if we have another dull consecutive day, might not be tomorrow, they might wait and go another day. It would just mean that if I miss a day, the following day, this time of year, I would need to get at it a bit earlier in the day. I mean, what's the time now? It's probably quite late. Why does that clock over there say 7:01? Because it isn't. Oh, I've been fiddling with the buttons again. What's the other clock say? That's more like it. It's 10:30 in the morning. Now, under normal circumstances, everything would be done in here by now, unless it was a really biggy day. I just wanted to show something. For a very special lady who has people's concerns and best interests at heart. Yeah, I don't know what it's called. Several people have told me what they think it's called, but as it stands at the moment, no tag because no positive ID. It's effectively, let's get my hand near it so you can see the size. It's a miniature Oncidium type. Now it is, I'm 90+% certain it's actually a Howiara, which nonetheless is, let's say, a cousin of Oncidiums. It's, you know, it's a mix. But they're very delicate little blooms. They are tiny, but lovely bold colours. But a lot of the Oncidiums have got the nickname Dancing Ladies, and it does tend to come from the yellow ones, and it does look a bit like, you know, somebody with arms and a head and a big skirt. Dancing Ladies. You can see where some of the orchids get their nicknames from. But been in bloom a while, and I don't know how long they're going to last. It's not even my plant really, it's my daughter's. But her cats chew the leaves on her plants if she can't keep them up on the shelf, and where her shelf is, this would not be getting anywhere near enough light, so it's been donated for me to care for. And it's bloomed nicely, and looking at the state of the bulb and the size that it bloomed on, it's probably going to follow that up with some more, looking at the way the new growths are, their size, how they're developing, and where that spike came out of. I've got a twinkle that's got, well, it's got a nice spike on it. I don't know whether I can get at it. It'll be silhouetted, but you can see the left-hand plant, the larger at the back. You can see the spike going up towards the glass. It's coming on nicely. And when I watered that yesterday or the day before, I forget which, there's 2 more spikes coming on that one, and I know there's going to be more, because again, you can on Oncidium types, you can see the development stage of the latest growth, the new growth that the spike's coming out of, and see what it compares with the older part of the plant. And some of them chuck their spikes out quite early before the new growths are properly mature. And some of them actually wait until they're fully mature and then they spike. But you know, you get to know your plants, and that one's got 2 more spikes coming on it, buried down in there somewhere. You probably can't see them because of the silhouette effect. If I watch the camera and see where I'm pointing, there's one there going up right at the back against the glass, and there's another little one here on the end of my finger, but I can't see what I'm doing, but anyway, they're there, trust me. I'm a man of honesty. Believe that, you believe anything. It's as true as I'm riding this bike. Trust is everything. Yeah, so I'm going to crack on today. If I spot anything special as I go round, I'll tag it on the end. You know my videos, I've often got a bit tagged on the end, but given that the mounts were actually looked at quite thoroughly last time I did them, I don't think there's anything new in amongst them. Just progress, just things pushing on, you know. Now, what are you up to? Don't remember you being pink last time I looked at you. I wonder if that precedes a possible blooming, or whether the flipping thing's dying. I'm sure it would go brown if it was dying rather than pink. Anyway, we have pink leaves. I don't even know if they're new leaves. I look at these so infrequently, so I don't know whether green leaves have gone pink or new leaves have come out that are pink, and whether that means I've got a problem or I'm actually going to get a bonus and get a little bloom on it, which I don't even... Actually, I think it would be the first time on this particular air plant, but that's distinctly pink. And of course we don't leave it like that, do we? It's an air plant. Don't leave it with water sitting in the crown. They don't like that much. So always give it a good upside down shake and make sure there's no residual water tucked in there. Yeah, we have pink leaves. I wonder what that's all about then. Maybe one of you knows. Strange behaviour. Yeah, interesting. Well, that's one thing that's changed. This Vanda's starting to open. This has changed colour since I first got it. When I first got it, it was actually a bright orange, whereas now it's a, what should I call it, an autumn orange. It's got hints of autumn colours in it, but its depth of colour has actually darkened since I got this plant. Now you have to bear in mind sometimes plant blooms are enhanced artificially to get them to be sold. Whether that happened or not, I haven't got a flipping clue. And yes, I did like the bright orange, but I like this too. I like autumn shades. If you think back to that catatanthe with that ridiculously huge spike, that's got autumn colours in it. I like these colours. Now I call this a Vanda. Strictly speaking, this would be an Ascocentrum, which is a hybrid between an Ascocenda and a Vanda, I believe. Irrelevant because most of the Ascocendas were reclassified as Vandas anyway. And a Vanda crossed with a Vanda is a Vanda in anybody's book. And it's Vandaceous, even if it's not a Vanda. But yeah, that's just coming out nicely. See, now this is a special plant. I haven't got many, but my daughter got me this. And quite honestly, she spent money that she didn't really have. She thought she needed to, so it's special. So I would do anything to keep this plant if it started to fail, which it isn't. I mean, it's growing well. Had a few of the old scale in its history, but none present at the moment, and it blooms well. So from her point of view, it was a good choice. She chose it because of the colours. She knows I like the yellow, orange and red stuff. And it had 2 spikes on it, and it's had so many since then. And this is its second blooming this year, and it's a double spike, one out each side. Did that twice last year. And a single one as well, so 3 lots of blooming last year. So yeah, this one does well for me. It grows well, so it's obviously happy with the light levels I can give it, and I think it has grown better this year simply because of what I changed in the way I water my Vanda types. As I say, I used to pour water over the roots and try and do it like I do most of my mounted orchids, and quite honestly, for these type of orchids, yes, that waters them and feed goes in at appropriate times, etc. But you're really only touching on the surface of these types of roots. These roots can take a flipping good soak, and they will have a limit. Yeah, you know, there comes a point when the roots are just wet, and they're not going to get any wetter. The only way they can really get any wetter is that the nutrients or moisture or whatever in the roots is moving up through the plant, leaving some room for some more to come in. But bearing in mind that's not a quick process, the chances are once they're wet, they're wet. And you can't really get them any wetter. It's just working out how long that takes, and they're all different. I mean, this one's got quite a fine root system. Yeah, it's got some older ones on here that aren't that much good anymore, but it's got a lot of new ones as well. That one's decided to head for the sky. They do that sometimes. A lot of tips growing, so it's got a perfectly healthy root system, even though some of them are old. But if you look at the size of them compared with my fingers, and then look at the size of some of the others, you know, these are infinitely larger roots. And this plant takes 3 times as long to hydrate properly and get that dark green colour on that plant than this one does. It hasn't got that colour at the moment because it hasn't gone where I was just putting it when I saw the blooms had opened. It goes in there, and it'll sit there for as long as it takes me to remember that it's in there and come back and change it and put another one in. It's just trying to get it to sort of stand up in an appropriate place where as many of the roots as possible are in the bucket. But they wick. You know, that one that's heading skywards there will actually hydrate at least over half of the length, even if the tip doesn't. And I usually just dunk that before I pull it out anyway. But you know, that one I can get away with probably 20 minutes and it'll do the job. Sometimes it sits there for 3 hours because I get sidetracked. Doesn't do it any harm, not this time of year. You know, it's going to dry in a couple of hours with the fans going. They're off at the moment, but you know, things dry out relatively quick with good air circulation, and that is a bonus. That good air circulation is a must. But yeah, different Vandas, different rates. And both of these two here have got very thick roots, so they take longer. The big blue up the back there, in the basket, that's got a finer root system. So that hydrates in 10 to 15 minutes and they're all lovely dark green. So that one takes no time at all. But this one takes practically an hour before I'm happy that it's reached that point where it's not going to take any more moisture in. That's an hour in the bucket, you know. If you think about that in terms of rainfall, that's an awful lot of rain, isn't it? Well, the awful lot of rain that it obviously needs, it gets in one go in my place. Gets it in the bucket. That's the big white one, by the way, that no longer is the big white one because the spike's off now, it's gone. Now I've just got that large white one down, and the wire, the hook, used to be, because it's just snapped, tied on to that with a little piece of you know, that garden wire with the plastic coating on it, because you shouldn't really tie stuff with raw metal. I mean, this metal is coated, so it's no, I think the actual metal is aluminium or something like that, but it's coated so that it's harmless, if you know what I mean. But I've now got to rethink about tying that, and as I put it into the bucket, I spotted that. That now, yes, we jump up and down, bounce up and down on the settee and go whoopee, yes, because we have another spike and the blooms are gorgeous, but the consequences of that now mean I've got to think about what I'm about to do. But I can't really do it yet, but I've got to think. The last spike that this had came up to here. Yeah, well, for that to be there, the plant had to drop down that much from where I keep it, which meant the roots started tangling up in other plants because of its size, yeah? So I'm now going to allow for that this time, and what I will probably do is get this plant to sit at an angle. Instead of being bolt upright, with the spike going bolt upright, I'll get it so that the spike is got to the point where the light's not going to affect it, and then just tilt the plant over so that the spike comes out sideways, in the hope that as it develops, the weight of the blooms will pull it down a bit, and the top of the plant can stay up in the light that it needs. You know, it's all very well saying it's got blooms at the moment, but they lasted ages. And by dropping it down away from the lightest point, that's growing time lost. You know, so yes, the blooms are nice, but I've still got to think of the plant. You know, and this plant's growing strongly at the moment. So, yeah, but we do have another spike on the large white. So that's its second one this year. Whoopee. I don't suppose there's a third one lurking in there. I couldn't be that lucky. No. But anyway, it's going to spike again. So we'll watch the progress of that one. Yeah, good stuff. Okay, just when you thought you'd finished filming, you get another bit. Request to add on. Just shut the electrics down. Might get a clue what I'm on about then. Rose has just asked about a new plant she's got, which is Dendrobium. Here we go. How are we going to say that then? Lodigessii. Or Lodigessii. One of those two. Now, this is my unusual Dendrobium, because unlike the others, this is a cool grower. Yeah, this comes from Far East, Laos, Vietnam, parts of China, stuff like that. But it grows quite high up to 1,500 meters, so hence the cool grower. Apart from that, this seems to grow where it flipping likes. It can be an epiphyte, a lithophyte, and in some cases it can be found growing on the ground, so part terrestrial. Yeah, so pretty easy going on where it grows, basically, where it can get a hold, I suppose, where it lands. But it tends to be a mat former. You can see mine's growing away from the mount in places, and well, other places it's tied on so it can't get away. But it often forms like a mound. The canes will often lie flat against a mossy background, and then you get roots coming out from the leaf joints and little plantlets grow out from there, which it looks like it's growing masses of kikis, but that's how they grow. So quite honestly, the canes can lie flat against moss, and it shouldn't do it any harm. It doesn't like to get hot with the sounds of it, so it doesn't need heat like a lot do. And the fact that it can be found growing on rocks implies it probably can stand a fair bit of light. It's relatively fleshy, the leaves. I wouldn't say they're flimsy, wishy-washy leaves. And the canes are quite sturdy, as Dendrobiums go. I don't know how big this is supposed to be before it blooms. So I don't actually know. I haven't had the plant long enough, basically, to know if that is capable of blooming at its appropriate time or not. So it's one of those wait and see jobs, really. I've got a feeling that my new canes, which have extended a fair bit this year, may well bloom next year, but I can't say that for certain. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I mean, it can grow flat against a mount. You can actually, you know, sort of push the canes back against the mount and they'll root at the leaf joints. And then you get little plants growing on from there, and they can arch over and grow into the mound. So it's like a mat forming, a clump forming one, rather than a long dangly one like some of them are, or a bolt upright like some of them are. So I mean, that's really as much as I've found out about this when I got it. It is a cool grower. It might even be a little bit warm for it in my grow room. Well, tough. You live where I put you at this stage anyway. Yeah, so doesn't need heat. Light I'm not absolutely sure about, but there are very few Dendrobiums that grow in deep shade. Let's just put it that way. Most of them get pretty good light, so I would suggest that's probably okay. And as far as growing it, if it can grow partly terrestrial, it will live in a pot. If it's a lithophyte, it can live in the old gravel stones or river rock or lava rock or stuff like that. But obviously there's an overhead, because obviously it's going to dry fast and you're going to need to water it a lot more often. And it would probably grow quite happily on a mount with or without moss. But given the description of how it grows, I would suggest it's one of those that ought to have some moss underneath it, and you know, and have that dampness around the base of the canes to get the roots into. I mean, mine's decided to take off sideways at the moment and put some new growth out the side there. In actual fact, although that looks like it's... Let me trace the plant. Where's the base of the plant is at the top of the mount. That's the bit I got. So the older canes that I got were hanging down, and it shot out from all over the place, quite honestly. Not from the base, strangely enough. And all that side... Oh, that's the foggers. All that side growth on the end there is on an old cane from the base of the plant that's pushed out sideways and grown some roots. So it's formed a new base, and out of that new base is a load of new growth and roots coming. So it's got a little bit of a strange growth habit. But I mean, if you look at the pictures of the blooms, boy, are they going to be worth waiting for. I just hope I get some. So that's what mine looks like. That's what I found out when I got it. And as I say, it does have an unusual growth habit because it's capable of shooting out lots of little plantlets along the length of the cane if the cane manages to touch against, you know, a mossy background or something like that. I presume if the canes stay in the air and don't manage to touch anything, they stay as normal canes, but I don't know that. I haven't had it long enough. Anyway, that's mine. Hope that helps and doesn't cause confusion, because we've had enough of that. We don't want any more. See what you can do. But yeah, I think Rose's plant got a bit squashed in transport. Hopefully it will plump up. But yeah, that's what mine looks like anyway. And that's the bit I know about it. Good luck.